Good day, everybody. Here is Carson back talking about stuff that um, helps you live your best life. So, so I've been through all these different spaces in terms of nutrition and diet, and I've come to some conclusions. So, uh, so there's this story that has been told to us about how saturated fats and animal products and cholesterol and all these things are not healthy, and they are something that we should avoid at all costs. And it is, they say, it is the leading cause of cardiovascular disease, obesity, diabetes, cancer, all different kinds of cancer, metabolic syndrome, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, polycystic cancer of the women, and prostate cancer of the men, and la di da, all this stuff. All these things that hinder us in living. So, funny thing is that this has started with Mr. Eisenhower. Once he was president of the United States. This doesn't sound good at all. Yeah, so Eisenhower had a heart attack while he was president of the States. And what happened was there were studies made, and you have to understand the designs of the studies at that time were not as advanced as the design of the studies that we have nowadays. So these were also mainly epidemiological studies, meaning they make inquiries to all the people, and then you have a correlation in terms of statistics, and they then conclude that people that eat meat have these diseases. The thing that you don't consider is that usually, especially if you're not really on a carnivore diet, you are eating meat with a lot of other stuff that you put into that hot dog, hamburger, and accompanying the whole meal, right? So at that time, they would ask, how often do you eat meat? And then they would say, I eat that often meat. But they don't ask, they didn't even have an idea about the whole gluten thing, the whole chemicals that were in all the other stuff that also comes from agriculture. They were not conscious about what do you call it, anti-nutrients and plant toxins, carbohydrates, and another really big one, which is polyunsaturated fatty acids. So this is, I will call polyunsaturated fatty acids PUFAs from now on. You have PUFAs, polyunsaturated fatty acids. You have monounsaturated fatty acids. You have saturated fatty acids. And then you have all these other different structures and so on. So not all PUFAs are bad. From what I have understood, omega-3 is a PUFA, but it is something that you actually need for your body. All of it you need to a certain extent. So there's this part of the omega-3 to omega-6 balance that you need to have in consideration. Omega-6 is a PUFA, but usually we have great amounts of omega-6. Omega-6 is also called linoleic acid. The thing is that it contributes to inflammation, the mitochondria of your cells. This is the center where the energy production happens in the cell. From all the 18 billions or trillions, or I don't know how many cells we have on your body, all of them have a nucleus where they produce energy. I'm not talking about the other nucleus with the DNA and all that stuff. I'm talking about the energy center. So the mitochondria produces ATP, which is energy in the cell. So now the mitochondria cannot and doesn't know how to deal with PUFAs. And so what happens is two things. Basically, it starts shutting down, and in your cell you not only have one mitochondria, you have several mitochondria. And the healthier the cell, the denser the the higher the mitochondrial density in the cell. So if you eat PUFAs a lot and then they start shutting down because of the PUFAs, the mitochondria, you will lose density in terms of mitochondria, meaning that the cells as an individual won't work as well as they should be working if they had the proper fuel. So you have all these trillion, billion, whatever cells in your body, and they start not working as an individual, meaning that the whole construct of your being starts not work as well the way it should be. So, and now this is about the functioning of the body under the influence of higher amounts of PUFAs. So now it seems that they are coming to a conclusion that PUFAs are actually the thing that has contributed to a rise in cardiovascular disease and all the other stuff, all the other things in that list that I had mentioned before, that this is probably the higher reason for all of this appearing. PUFAs. Poliunsaturated fatty acids, linoleic acid in specific, omega-6. So now why is it that they have said that meats are not good, meaning saturated fats, and that thing that you make tallow with, which is the fat from the cow, especially suet, like the best fat that exists is the one around the kidneys, which is really high in stearic acid. I will come to that later, but the thing is that the reason why they have said this, so there's this conflict of interest in the middle of all of this. So Ansel Keys was the guy that determined, the scientist that determined that saturated fatty acids and cholesterol are the reason for cardiovascular disease. The reason why President Eisenhower had his heart attack. Did I say stroke before? It is a heart attack. So what happened was that Ansel Keys became the head of the American Heart Association, and then all of a sudden they had a big sponsor by a company called Crisco, and Crisco is and was at that time the biggest producer of polyunsaturated fatty acids for human consumption. So if you research on the internet and look for Crisco and when they started off, from what I have understood, they started off more or less at that time. What happens is, over the years since then, is that actually the consumption of saturated fatty acids went down, the consumption of meat went down, but actually cardiovascular disease, obesity, diabetes, and all these other diseases, they started rising. And what actually started rising or continued rising exactly on the same, like in correlation to it completely, like almost like one on top of the other, is the consumption of polyunsaturated fatty acids, in specific linoleic acid. So, where do you find polyunsaturated fatty acids? You have a bunch of them. There are many different ones, but we're going in direction of omega-6 linoleic acid. You find them in plant seed oils, especially soybean oil, which soy doesn't really have oily seeds, so. And then you have sunflower oil, you have peanut oil, you have olive oil has just a little bit, you have sesame oil, you have linseed oil. So we're going into nuts already. You have also many polyunsaturated fatty acids in cashew and in walnuts and in almonds and all these others like pistachios and so on. So polyunsaturated fatty acids are specifically from plant origin. Like everything that is of a plant origin will have much more polyunsaturated fatty acid, PUFAs. Coconut oil has also some. So now there's this other side then. If you are consuming these kinds of plants, one of the things that happens is that these plants are very rich in antinutrients, in for example, oxalates, phytates, glycosinolates, solanines, saponins, you have polyphenols, you have tannins, you have all these different molecules that exist in plants that are actually there to protect the plants from their kids, meaning the seeds, being eaten. So the plants don't really want that their seeds are eaten because the seeds are actually there for the plant's reproduction and making more of their children. And as plants are rooted in the soil, they don't have a defense mechanism other than a chemical and biochemical and biological defense mechanism. And this is where anti-nutrients and all these that I have mentioned now, oxalates and so on, these are anti-nutrients and they will hinder you in mineral absorption, they will damage your intestinal walls. So like you have, what do you call it again? Intestinal permeability, which then also is connected to the permeability of your blood-brain barrier, meaning that there's stuff that is not supposed to come into the bloodstream from your intestines, and there's also stuff that is not supposed to go into your brain, and these barriers are broken by, for example, gluten, which is a leptin. Leptin is also an anti-nutrient that you find, for example, in cabbage, broccolis, and so on. So who would have known that plants are actually much more toxic than animal foods? So this is a very strong assumption for many of you, but do your research. Look for the most recent research. Do some research on plant toxins. Do some research on if there's actually a study that proves that animal fats contribute to cardiovascular disease, because there are actually many studies also from Ansel Keys at that time that were not published, and they were found by another scientist years later in the basement of that place, and he has published them only lately. And all these studies by Ansel Keys, they were not published because they were insignificant in proving that animal fats, animal products, and so on are the reason for cardiovascular disease and all these other diseases that I have mentioned before. So this is a very deep subject, and it goes really in all these different directions, and I'm already talking for 15 minutes, but yeah, this is just an introduction, really. And let me know if you're interested in this. Let me know if this has opened some of or questioned and really questioned many of your beliefs that you have regarding food. We all say and we all think that plants are much healthier than animal foods, but look into anti-nutrients, look into nutrient bioavailability, look at, for example, essential amino acids, their presence, how many there are, in conjunction with bioavailability, and then in conjunction with something that is called DIAS, DIAS, digestible indispensable amino acid score, and you will find that for you to get all the nutrients that are supposed to go into your system for you to exist in a healthy way, you won't get them unless you eat very big amounts of plant foods. And all these very big amounts of plant foods, for example, if you want to go for protein, you need to eat a lot of beans. And don't try eat 5 kidney beans because you will be dead. So if you have to put these plants into this whole process of getting rid of all the anti-nutrients, and then you won't get enough of their protein because you will have to eat a lot more calories of that plant because the DIAS is low, the bioavailability of the nutrients is low, and the presence of the nutrients, now I'm talking specific about amino acids, are not present. The presence is not high enough. So you have all these things, and then in conjunction with how many calories you must take from it, which most of them are a lot of much more carbohydrates, in beans in specific, and then they will come loaded with all the anti-nutrients, and man, you want to go down that road? I'm sorry. So yeah, this is some of the particularities of eating plant foods, and also the great reason why I stopped eating plants and right now I'm only eating animal products. So I hope this was intriguing. I hope this was controversial, and I hope we can talk a little bit more about this, and let me know what you think. Put your comments down below. I'm putting this on my YouTube channel. Please do subscribe if you're interested in more about this subject. And yeah, I hope you have a beautiful day, and you guys rock on, eh?